Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Outside Views, where Brexit never quite ends. Just when we thought the dust had settled, Brexit is back with a vengeance, and the United Kingdom and the European Union have announced a new deal aimed at bringing both sides closer together. I talked about this yesterday. But is this fresh agreement a new start for Britain, or is it, as some are loudly proclaiming, a betrayal of Brexit itself? Let's unpack this complex issue, exploring the heated reactions across the British media spectrum and see what it means for the UK's future relationship with the EU. Prime Minister Keir Starmer calls this a new era in our relationship, while Ursula von der Leyen, the EU Commission President, has hailed it as a historic moment. But let's face it, history and Brexit have a complicated relationship. First, we must talk fish, because fish remain the unexpected epicenter of Brexit drama. A Scottish Fisheries lobby representative immediately blasted the deal, accusing Starmer's government of total surrender to the EU. This criticism echoes loudly in British tabloids such as The Sun, which has labelled the Fisheries agreement as a humiliating defeat, and their claim that foreign vessels will continue to plunder British waters, describing this agreement as a Brexit betrayal. Yet, despite these fiery accusations, the Financial Times has taken a far more measured stance. They argue the agreement isn't a catastrophic sellout nor an enormous victory. Instead, they characterize it as symbolically important, a sign of realism and pragmatic cooperation between Britain and Europe. After years of strained relations, the Financial Times sees this as a recognition from both sides that cooperation is essential. On trade, the Times highlights several practical benefits of the agreement. The removal of specific trade barriers, particularly those around food and agricultural products, should immediately boost Britain's economy and simplify life for exporters. This streamlined trade process will likely provide a modest but meaningful growth boost. And tourists will also celebrate, as electronic passport checks at borders could make summer holidays smoother. Still, the Times warns against too close an alignment with Brussels. While freer trade has advantages, the newspaper insists Britain must remain vigilant not to get sucked back into the EU's orbit, risking future economic independence. Unsurprisingly, the reactions from traditional Brexit-supporting media are harshly critical. The Sun, a champion of the Leave campaign, has condemned the agreement as Brexit fraud, claiming Starmer has capitulated to EU demands. In their view, this undermines Britain's post-Brexit sovereignty, essentially reversing Brexit itself. Yet, on the opposite side, The Guardian enthusiastically supports the agreement. They see it as the beginning of repairing the colossal damage Brexit inflicted on Britain's economy and international standing. Their columnists argue this deal isn't betrayal, but rather a desperately needed correction of previous Brexit mistakes. Similarly, the Daily Mirror, traditionally aligned with the Labour Party, praises Starmer and his pragmatic approach. According to them, Starmer has skillfully dismantled some of the worst aspects of Boris Johnson's dishonest Brexit, providing Britain a chance to stabilise its economy and society. However, even the Mirror wishes Starmer would go further, returning fully to the EU single market and customs union if possible. And what about European perspectives? The Italian newspaper Repubblica describes the agreement as foundational for deeper cooperation in defense, security, and even harmonized arms production. Yes, Britain's concessions on fisheries sting, but the paper emphasizes significant EU concessions on customs and plant health checks for British agricultural products. And meanwhile, Germany's Süddeutsche Zeitung offers another interesting perspective, stressing the diplomatic victory this agreement represents. Whether every detail works flawlessly or not is almost secondary, they argue. The real victory here is the rekindled diplomatic partnership between Britain and the EU. Indeed, beyond fisheries and trade, there's considerable progress in critical areas such as security and defense. And Britain and the EU have committed to intensive cooperation, including Britain's potential participation in the EU civilian and military crisis management operations. And there's even talk of British companies gaining access to a massive €150 billion European rearmament fund. Yet, despite these advances, fisheries remain the loudest political flashpoint domestically. Scottish Shadow Secretary Andrew Bowie described the fisheries deal bluntly as a capitulation, illustrating the heated domestic tensions. But let's consider the broader picture. The new agreement includes efforts to harmonize food and plant safety standards, reducing bureaucratic hurdles. Such alignment promises to ease trade, boosting Britain's agricultural exports significantly. And this practical measure could offer lasting economic benefits. Additionally, there's exciting potential regarding energy and climate cooperation. Both sides are exploring Britain's return to the EU's internal electricity market, a move welcomed by Britain's energy sector. The proposed link between UK and EU emissions trading systems could also reduce carbon border tax implications, helping Britain's industries stay competitive. On border security, there is substantial progress as well. Enhanced British access to EU databases holding fingerprints and DNA data of non-EU nationals represents a breakthrough in border management and security cooperation. Moreover, discussions about reinstating electronic passport gates at border checkpoints could significantly simplify travel and boost tourism. Education and youth mobility remain contentious but promising topics. Though Britain remains hesitant to rejoin the Erasmus program, discussions for a youth mobility scheme resembling those with Australia and New Zealand continue. And this approach aims to balance cultural exchange and economic necessity with British sensitivities about free movement. So is this agreement a new start or a Brexit betrayal? Well, the answer inevitably depends on whom you ask. Supporters argue it's the pragmatic reset Britain desperately needs after years of economic and diplomatic turmoil. Critics see it as a dangerous retreat from Brexit's fundamental principles. Yet realistically, this agreement is probably somewhere in between. It symbolizes a practical diplomatic realignment that acknowledges economic realities without wholly abandoning Brexit's ideological roots. For now, it's a cautious step towards reconciliation rather than a wholesale betrayal. But the challenge remains substantial. Prime Minister Starmer must balance domestic demands for sovereignty with the economic imperative for closer EU relations. His ultimate success will depend heavily on public perception and whether these new agreements deliver tangible improvements in daily life. So what's your take? Do you see this as a pragmatic reset, or is Starmer betraying Brexit? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay updated on Brexit and more. Thanks for joining me today on Outside Views, your go-to channel for clear insights into European politics and beyond.